Welcome, Sabrina Victoria. I'm so happy to have you on this platform. You are one of my favorite people on the face of the planet because for me, you represent women's empowerment and transformation under very difficult circumstances. I want to start by reading you a quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that reminds me of you. The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. I know you have had a very difficult experience, and I want to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love to kind of start towards the beginning because I think that my upbringing has a lot to do with the journey that I ended up on. So I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. And everything was fine until I ended up pregnant at the age of 20 with no husband. Emphasis on the no husband part. And because of that, Jehovah's Witnesses have a rule against premarital sex. And you can't really hide a baby. So it's evidence that I had had premarital sex. And they have a thing called disfellowshipping or shunning, where you lose communication with your entire family and the only community that you've ever known your entire life. So during the most vulnerable part of my life, pregnant, first child and first grandchild for everybody involved, I lost all communication with my mother, my father, my entire immediate family, and all of my friends that I had ever known. And that kind of set me up in a very isolated, dark, mental state of mind.
I can't even imagine that level of isolation at your most vulnerable time in your life of not having anyone to turn to. What did you do?
You know, Jehovah's Witnesses have this thing where, and this is what is so frustrating about organizations that do things like this. There is a rule where when you are disfellowshipped, you cannot communicate with the people inside of your religion, and you also cannot communicate with the people outside of your religion. And the reason why is because you're living in an area where there's Jehovah's Witnesses all over the place. Like you're living within your territory. They're taught to tell on each other. So because of that, you're in complete isolation. So here I am going through this life-changing circumstance or journey, and I have no friends, no family, and no one on the outside to turn to. So quite frankly, I sat by myself in complete isolation during pregnancy, during all of the questions, during, the birth, during the first, year or so of my son being alive. And during this time also, I had my son's father, but quickly after my son was born, the congregation sat down with me and said, hey, listen, you need to either marry your son's father or break up with your son's father. You can't be playing house because it's confusing the congregation. So because I was so desperately trying to get back with my family, with my friends, with God, I decided to break up with him. And me just being so naive to the concept of money, to the concept of like what that would look like as a single mother, I broke up with him and he spiraled. His father was not happy with me and he wound up just leaving the state. He just ran away. And now I have a son who's 3 or 4 months, I am making like $8 an hour at my minimum wage job, and I'm getting zero child support. So, eviction notices on my apartment door every other month, my car getting repoed out of the parking lot, a rolling balance of negative $172 in my bank account at any given time, real dark thoughts of suicide. And then I'm also dealing with postpartum at the same time, and I don't even know what postpartum is. So I'm having these horrific thoughts as a mother about my baby that led me to believe that I was just a horrible mother, just kind of like a psychopath. And again, having nobody to turn to, having nobody to ask these questions to. So that also giving me these thoughts of like sinner, dark, helplessness, hopelessness, despair, and wanting to run away. Not
This
wanting to do this
is
anymore.
so contrary to the message of the Bible, which is all about forgiveness and compassion. And so what happened next?
I did that for about 1.5 years. I don't know how I did it. Truly. Like, I have no idea how I did that. But I wound up meeting a man who had money. And I thought he was given to me by God because he had money. And I ignored the dozens and dozens of red flags that were stapled very obviously on his body, and just ignored it because I was just in such a desperate state of needing affection, of needing attention, of somebody who's paying attention to me finally. And so I fell hook, line, and sinker into this relationship with a man who later I found out loves to take women in who are in a state of despair because he can look like the knight in shining armor, and he comes in with his money to save. And then he's able to use that against you. He's able to dangle stuff in front of you. He's able to dangle little carrots. And within a very short amount of time, he convinced me to leave my place because I couldn't afford it anyways and move in with him. And all I had to do was take care of the house and then quit my job because I hate my job anyways. And let's build an empire together. And, oh, you can't pay your phone bill because I'm not paying you anything to work 12 to 14 hours a day. So let me take over your phone bill. Oh, you can't take care of your car. So let me take care of your car for you. And before I know it, I turn around within a very short amount of time and I have nothing and I own nothing. And I have no money in my bank account. And the verbal abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, and obviously financial abuse took hold.
At what point did you realize that he fit into the profile of a narcissist?
Way too long. And this is why I share my story. I share my story because I was living on this roller coaster of a relationship, so confused out of my mind, because these individuals make you feel like you are the problem, like you are the issue. You're the crazy one. You're the dramatic one. You're the over emotional one. 8 years.
Incredible. Totally incredible. What kept you going during the low points? I imagine that there had to be so many low points in the course of this relationship. And again, with no one to turn to, because it seems he was intent on totally controlling every aspect of your life.
Yeah. So all those suicidal thoughts that I had, early on as a single mother, and then the journey into this relationship just compounded those tenfold. I remember living in Pittsburgh for a few years, and there was this bridge that I would drive over every single day on my way to work or on the way to his company, my work, but his company. And I would think every single day, all I have to do is turn the wheel just like a couple of centimeters, and my car would fly off this bridge and all of this turmoil, all of this darkness, this life that I have created, this prison that I have put myself in, me being a sinner, would just go away. And I remember thinking this every single day. And the only thing that would help me take a breath and just stay en route would be one sentence. And the sentence was, I can always do it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew that I was going to go over the same bridge. And if I couldn't handle today, if today was so unbearable that I couldn't live another day, then the very next day, the following day, I would go over that same bridge and I can stop my journey that day.
Were the thoughts of your son a disincentive also to you committing suicide?
You know, it's very interesting when it comes to that because, you know, I'm pretty heavy in the addiction arena. I've been sober for 17 years. And, you know, there's this thing within the substance abuse arena that says, like, you have to save yourself. Like, you have to do it for yourself. You can't do it for somebody else. And yeah, you know, I don't think that I was present in my life during many years. I think that I was living my life as a zombie. And I think that my son was probably the only reason. The only reason.
And what type of relationship did this man have with your son? Did you see any abuse directed at him, or was it primarily directed at you?
Yeah, so, you know, individuals like this, they pick and choose their victims. For me, it was predominantly, I was his one and only during this era. There was 2 times where he did lash out at my son towards the very end. And that was kind of the, you know, one of the main reasons why I knew I had to hurry up and get the heck out of there, because my son was getting into his teen years and I knew that it was going to be a catastrophe if I would have stayed with the testosterone of both of them. But, you know, I wound up leaving that relationship when my son was early teens, between like 12 and 13 years old. So, you know, I did not see any issues besides just 2 little stints that lasted maybe an hour or so. But nothing.
That was a very difficult journey. Actually having put the steps in place to be able to leave that relationship. That was a process for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know, so my story, as far as how I found out, one day I was on the floor in the bathroom in the dark, just having a total mental breakdown. For those of your listeners who have had, you know, the anxiety or the depression or the suicidal thoughts, as far as just wanting to die, where you're on the floor and you're screaming and you're crying at the same time, and you feel as if your soul is exiting your body. That is the breakdown that I was having in the bathroom. And I took out my phone. And I Googled, why is my boyfriend bullying me? Because I didn't know any other vernacular other than bully. And the entire world of personal development, narcissism, codependency, empathy, financial abuse just hit me right in the face. And that changed everything. That I literally, within 2 minutes of doing a quick Google rundown, I recognized that I was living in this area of Google, and like, this was not my fault. And I was a victim. And I immediately, literally from having a total mental breakdown to absolute relief within like moments, within minutes, and creating a plan to escape.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable. You have said that money is power, right? And you certainly made a lot of money for this man in his businesses, which he did not share with you. What prevented you from just taking the money and running?
Not everybody, a lot of people ask me that. Because I was on the bank accounts, I did take care of his money at the end. He didn't even know his own passwords to his own bank accounts. So I very easily could. This is the thing, when you feel as if you are associating with somebody on that level that's that dark, you just want to run, you just want to get away. You're not trying to cause any extra from these individuals. You're just trying to just cut all ties, 100% communication. You don't want them to have any reason to call you, text you, contact you, look at you ever again. And I knew that if I even took $1 from this man, there would be some sort of repercussion, and it would just drag on. And I had already wasted so much of my time. So when I left, I'm just like, you
wanted a clean break.
Take your stuff and just leave me alone. And he did. He left me alone.
Did you fear for your personal safety? At what point was there physical abuse, and how severe was it?
Never physical abuse. There was one instance at the very, very beginning. I was helping him set up his very first office. We were maybe 6 months in. We were putting together furniture and like cleaning, and I vacuumed one of the offices. He asked me, he's like, can you vacuum the back office? I was like, yeah. Vacuum the back office. He went to go, I put the vacuum back in the linen closet, and I get to making more furniture, and he goes back there to go put something away, and he screams my name. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I go over, like, what's going on? He's like, you vacuumed in the wrong direction.
Incredible. The sense of control.
Yeah. So he asked me to re-vacuum in the right direction. He's like, only an idiot would vacuum this way. Everybody in the entire world knows that you're supposed to run the vacuum in this direction. You need to re-vacuum. And I was like, no, I'm not going to re-vacuum. We're going to be in and out of here like a dozen times over the duration of the next 2 days putting this together. I'm not going to re-vacuum. And he's like, fine, I'll re-vacuum. And the guilt, the shame, he's like, I just bought you lunch, and I can't believe you can't do this one thing for me again. They like use money to control you. So I was so weird. I went, I got the vacuum again. And while I was passing him in the hallway to go re-vacuum, I purposely allowed my shoulder to hit his shoulder because I was just so angry. So I just kind of did like a little side check, not aggressive. I'm like a little person. But I, allowed my shoulder to hit his shoulder, and he, within moments, he took my shoulder, slammed me against the wall, and he goes, if you want this to turn into a physical relationship, something like that, you make the first move, I'll follow. So he and I never touched him ever again after that, and he never touched me. Wow. He would hit things, he would throw things, he would punch things all the time, but never in my direction.
I know I asked you this question before, but how did you not kill this monster?
You know what? It's very interesting that it's interesting. And I talk about this sometimes, the very first person that I talked to about this was my mom. I do have a relationship with my parents now. My son is now 19 years old, so this has been a very long journey for me. But I remember having a conversation with my mother and saying to her point blankly that if I don't get out of this relationship, one of us is going to end up on the front page of the newspaper. Wow. Dead. And it wasn't going to be because of him. It was going to be because of me. I was going to grab a knife, and either I was going to hurt him or he was going to take the knife from me and hurt me. Mm-hmm. Because our relationship, the viciousness that comes out of this man's mouth, I couldn't top. Like, it's so quick, it's so witted, it's so deep into like your soul. You can't do anything, but like, words aren't deep enough. Like, words don't cut enough. And it was getting to that point, and I knew at that, once that those started to creep up inside of me, because I'm not a violent person at all, I knew I had to get out fast.
So tell us about that process. How did you manage to do it?
So that day I started planning. Literally that day, I took out a notebook. I started writing down a plan of money and how I was going to start collecting money. Soon after that, I opened up a secret bank account in another town. A few months after that, I opened up a secret storage unit. I started 3 online businesses over the course of 4 years. I was able to secretly collect $50,000. And, within those 4 years, I was able to escape. I took my son, our clothes, and my bicycle. That's the only thing I left with. And I started all over again with a mattress on the floor. And I've never worked for anybody since.
But there was a hitch in the plan, right? Did he discover your...
There was a lot of hitches in the plan. Yeah. And, this is the part that people don't understand, unless you hear the whole story. People will try one time to leave and it doesn't work. And then they're like, oh, then I guess I'm meant to be. And that was my story. I had collected $6,000 within a year or so, making this little side cash, and my ego got in the way. I wanted him to see that I was smart, that I was brilliant, that I was capable. Because he would always say, like, oh, you act like you're all big and mighty, but the only reason, you're living here or you have what you have is because this is my company. You can't do this on your own. You're incapable. You didn't go to college. You don't have a business mind. And I did do it. I did start making money. I did open up a secret bank account or a secret business, and I was making money, and I wanted to show it to him. And I had my bank account open, paid $6,000, and my ego just had me keep it open just a second too long. And he came up behind me, and he saw the money and totally freaked out. He stopped paying me what I called my allowance or my chore money. He was paying me $250 a week, which just paid for like the groceries and gas. And I was broke at the end of every month because it was not nearly enough. And so he stopped paying that. He thought I was like skimming off the top somehow, even though that would have been impossible. And because he didn't know about the secret businesses. So he stopped paying me the $250 until that money ran out. For 6 months, he didn't pay me. But I was still working my businesses. So money was still putting on top. And then finally he started paying me 6 months later. I started saving again, hardcore, going at it. And then 2 years later, I have $13,000. I contact my son's dad and I'm like, hey, I have money. I'm leaving this man. He's horrible. I can't stand him. I'm looking for apartments. I'm just letting you know there's going to be some changes. I might need your help watching my son or watching our son. He's like, yeah, sure. No problem. I got you. I'll do whatever. Yes. A few weeks after that, he goes, hey, let me take our son on a camping trip. I was like, okay, yeah, totally. You can take him on a camping trip. No problem. Long story short, he didn't give him back. He just kept him. So it was horrible. The day that he was supposed to be back, he's ignoring all my text messages, all my phone calls. Finally, he texts me and says, I will no longer be communicating you through anywhere except for email. I open up my email. And there's this long ass email that was not written by him, by the way, I could tell. Basically saying, thank you so much for watching our child over the last decade or so. I got it from here. And he just disappeared.
And you had no clue that he was thinking about this the whole time?
Nope. And he had just moved in with the girl that he was dating. So I didn't know where she lived. I knew where he lived, but I didn't know where she lived. And so I had to contact a lawyer. It was an entire year process that costed me $18,000. Oh. So at that point, I had $13,000 saved up. The last little bit that I had to pay my lawyer was the rest on credit. So now not only do I have no money, but now I'm in debt because of this situation. So I'm in my car. And I have this piece of paper with the child custody on it that's like 17 pages long that costed me 18 grand, saying when baby daddy can see his son. And I'm starting all over again. And I'm literally like talking to the universe or talking to whoever and just being like, what is going on? Like, am I destined to be here in this relationship? Is this my punishment for being a sinner? Is this my punishment for leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses? Is this my punishment for being a horrible mother, for being whatever? And I had to make a decision on whether or not I was going to try again. And I'm bawling my eyes out like a crazy person in my car, just so tired, so worn out, beat up from this whole thing. For anybody who's been through child custody or divorce or anything like that, it's horrific. All the stuff that I'm going through, my current abusive relationship, trying to show up as a mom to my son and not show any emotion. Also working this business 12 to 14 hours, also trying to run my side businesses, but barely able to. I mean, I can't even breathe. And wanting the whole thing to end. Wanting to jump off a bridge.
What kept you going, Sabrina? Why didn't you give up?
Why didn't I give up? It's interesting when you think about life. Like, what is it? Like, what is it? And I, at that moment, and a little bit before that, I started to like play a game. And I was like, I don't want to lose.
Good for you.
I don't want to lose. And I also don't want to turn around 15 years later and think, what if I would have tried one more time? What if I would have just saved one more time? What would have happened? So I, again, put all my eggs in my basket because I believe that I am the hardest working person I know. And I went all in on myself. And within a year, $31,000 and just a random day in June.
What advice would you have for women that are stuck in abusive relationships, that feel that they're totally helpless?
Yes. And there's always a hole in their plan. My ex used to say that he was creating a master plan and I couldn't know the master plan. There's always a hole in the master plan. Unless you are chained in a basement, peeing in a bucket. And even then, right? They can't watch you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's holes. There's areas of which you have freedom. And you have to pinpoint on when that is. When I first started, my very first little thing of money was eBay. And all I would do is on my little spits of spare time, 5 minutes here, 15 minutes there, an hour here, I would just take pictures of things, books, toys, clothes, and I would slowly list them on eBay. And my goal was just to list 10 items a week. Just 10 items a week. All I need is a total of an hour over a week to list 10 items. And I could find 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 15 minutes here and there to list these items. 10 turns into 20, turns into 40, turns into 70, turns into 120. And before I know it, I have an entire store on eBay where people are buying things.
And you also did some work with coaching as well.
Yeah. Later on, I wound up opening up my first little company called pureaspirations.net. That was where I began my personal development coaching. I started getting certified under the radar without him knowing it. And I opened up a small little coaching business that I ran off of Instagram only. And started selling my first little coaching programs there. And then what's funny is when I first left, while I was still with him, I was creating a program called How to Leave Your Husband in 365 Days. And it was my exact blueprint on how I was able to, all the things that you need, the mental state you have to have, all the scenarios in one program. And the moment that I left, I launched that program. And
wow, totally incredible. I'm so proud of you that you did that.
thank you.
And you have created an amazing women's empowerment platform through Facebook. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as you can tell through my story, there's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of my community being stripped away from me because of decisions that I decided to make. Deciding to keep my baby is what lost me my entire community. If I would have aborted my baby secretly, I would have been able to stay. And I just think that just thinking about that just boils me, just boils me. So I have dove headfirst into building an all women's community. It's called Her Nation. I'm looking to build the largest all female community on the planet, where it's just love. It's all about sharing stories.
Amazing guest speakers who are so successful, and they share how they've struggled, how they've triumphed, how they've totally transformed their lives. And this is by women for women. And your network is growing every day, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's all based off of one premise, and that premise is that you, Linda, know something that I don't know, and I, Sabrina, know something that you, Linda, don't know. And the only way for each of us to rise as females or rise as humans is for us to get into a room and share stories, share experiences, share knowledge with each other, to fill those holes of unknowings. Because a lot of times what happens, we have a conversation with somebody and all of a sudden there's an aha moment of like, oh my gosh, all this time. So creating a safe space.
It's funny that you say that, because in private practice, I do encounter those aha moments. It's almost like a light bulb goes on. It's like
yes.
it could be a 70-year-old woman, it could be a 10-year-old girl, but it's always so gratifying to see when things are just so illumined.
Yep, exactly.
Now, a lot of people are struggling with depression and severe depression. And I think isolation is one of the worst things for depression. What words of encouragement can you give to someone who is so low that they're thinking of taking their life?
Yeah. I did not do this during my dark times. I do this now during dark times. I have learned about a concept called inner child. And I believe that we are every year we have ever been. So I believe that I have a 1-year-old Sabrina, a 7-year-old Sabrina, a 15-year-old Sabrina, a 21, a 28, a 36, a 39-year-old Sabrina inside of me. And each one of those Sabrinas lived for 1 year, and they did the best that they could during that year that they were in control. And when I look back at the Sabrina who lived 25, the Sabrina who lived 27, the Sabrina who lived 29, during some of the toughest times in my life where I know I just wanted to end it. I did not want to be alive anymore. I did not want to be on this earth anymore. I did not want to wake up anymore. I did not want to endure the ridiculousness that I was enduring anymore. And I look back now, and I am so grateful that those Sabrinas kept going, kept waking up, kept pushing forward, kept showing up with a good attitude, kept researching, kept educating herself, kept doing the things that she knew the best that she could.
And that's the life force that's in every single human being.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing, the potential that is in each person. Just sometimes a person doesn't realize their potential.
Yeah.
Until maybe they have that aha moment.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's like, it's not for you now. That's not why you're getting up. That's not why you're forcing yourself out. That's not why you're showing up. It's not for you now. It's for you future. It's for you future. You have, because I'm telling you right now, as future Sabrina, I am so grateful that the depressed Sabrina or the anxiety-filled Sabrina kept going.
Yeah, and I really think that there's a huge part for healing the inner child, because a lot of people have those wounds from childhood where maybe they were subjected to physical, emotional, psychological abuse, or maybe there were tragedies in their life. And as a child, a lot of the cultures in a family really don't promote talking or healing. So those wounds are festering and are never really given the opportunity to heal.
Yeah.
And there's so many resources now through the internet, and the education is massive. I think the first step is the self-knowledge, right? And once you have the self-knowledge, it's really creates the opportunity to be able to master those things. They say that one of the goals of therapy is to make the unconscious conscious. And once it is conscious, then you have a greater degree of power and control over it. But good for you. I think the best revenge is a life well lived. And you've certainly done that, right?
Yes.
And do you have a relationship with your family now?
Yeah. It's not where I necessarily would want it to be, but my family is still, my parents are still Jehovah's Witnesses, so they have their faith, and I completely 100% respect that and what that means for them. But I do have boundaries for myself now. I do stand up for myself now. I do have, my own limits and conversations that I am okay with, and I stay true to that.
And were you able to find a man that treats you well?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I have a wonderful man. He is everything that I didn't know existed, which is nice. And it's interesting when you allow yourself to step into who you are authentically and no longer allow society or the world to dictate who you are.
It's living life on your own terms.
Yes. Yep.
That's wonderful. Any last thoughts for us?
Yeah. My motto that I've had since I was probably 26 years old, my motto is everything's going to be okay.
There's definitely a lot to be said for the power of positive thinking, which is a great book, by the way, by Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. And I see this so often get played out in people's lives. Negative thoughts produce negative results. And if you really want to take your life somewhere, it's just really about becoming conscious of those negative thoughts and turning them, transforming them, seeing the possibilities, which, anyone could do that at any time.
Yep. 100.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your sharing your life story with us. And I know I very much appreciate watching your guest speakers on Her Nation. And thank you once again.
Yes.